Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. We're Big Bad and back here at Sensible Music with the rather wonderful Mr. John Moon. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Well, you are a producer, engineer, mixer, mastering engineer. You've been at Sensible, I mean, you basically are Sensible. You've been here since when?
I started working for Jeff, who was the previous owner of Sensible, in about 1987. I had been introduced by a mutual friend who worked in a rehearsal studio opposite where Sensible Hire was. Because in those days, it really was just a hire company. I say just a hire company, it was quite a big hire company, not quite as big as John Henry's down the road, but nonetheless quite well known and prolific. I could see this as a way of having, because I had to put a roof over my head, you know, this was a way of making a living where I could still be creative and do something that I enjoy, you know. That's a blessing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can't say it was easy. It's been a lot of hard work.
Yeah, do what you love and make money as a consequence of it.
Yeah.
So when did Sensible from 86, 87 turn into this, where it would start having studios and stuff?
From those humble beginnings, I mean, I say they were humble, but it was fantastic jobs, because I would get rented out like a piece of equipment. So someone would rent a sampler for the day. They were quite expensive units.
Sure.
I would be rented out with it.
What samplers, by the way?
S900.
Yeah.
S1000 and subsequent all those sort of things. The S50 keyboard, the Roland sampling keyboard. It would build and build and build, and we made a small studio room there where I could do bits and pieces. I remember I used to do a lot of voiceover work for Martin Clunes, who's
Love Martin Clunes.
Yeah, and it was quite early on in the career. I mean, I was also working the cabaret circuit, playing keyboards and triggering samples. Lee Evans was our support. It was the same sort of time as Eddie Zard and some of those other. It was a real cross-platform thing that I found myself doing, and Jeff was always very supportive that in personal projects, because work generates work, you know?
Yeah, work begets work, yeah.
And so it did. Eventually, we got to the stage of recording really big concerts.
So it's the live recording that comes back to the studio.
Early 90s, I think it was 92. Earth, Wind and Fire was the first of these big series of concerts.
Incredible. Where?
In Brunei.
On to what?
Several other concerts. At the time, it was DA-88.
DA-88s, yeah. Tascams, yeah.
We took those out actually every time. We had 3 Sony 48 machines by the early 90s, whenever they came out, 93, something. Well, but we would use the DA-88 system and ADAT.
Did you just have like redundant systems, like a couple going at all times?
We'd have a backup system, running all the time, because there was no Pro Tools or computers that were capable of doing that.
Not that many tracks anyway. Yeah.
No, and because it was quite a big thing, and our little room at Sensible wasn't really enough to cope with these big sound to picture mixes. And after having done a couple, enough revenue along with everything else was generated to build this place. We took on in 94 thereabouts, and the hire department also moved next door to what is now Vinted, in that large warehouse building. It had outgrown its warehouse, which is now currently tile yard. So the whole operation moved to Brewery Road, and we built this place. And subsequently, one year we were doing Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston and Elton John and Sting and all the big names.
What console were you bringing out with you?
We didn't take a console. No, we had
just took a split from the line.
No, very good question actually. There's a picture of it over the road.
I mean, was it an English console?
But it was just a line mixer basically.
Okay.
It wasn't anything substantial. We fitted a Euphonics 3200 series, which is the first generation of digital consoles. It was actually digital control over the analog signal.
Yeah.
I loved it. Instant snapshot recall, 2 dynamics per channel, 2 EQs per channel. I loved it. Grew up on that disc.
It was always a strange console, wasn't it? Because it's like a big kind of empty box that controlled this rack of pre's and everything. That was all the analog stuff.
We had 2 racks. We had a rack in that glass.
Yeah.
This was see-through to the tape machine room, so you could see the tape machine still. And then there were three more racks in there. And of course you had to keep all these air conditioned all the time. It wasn't, you know, it was more expensive to turn it off than to leave it running, you know. But eventually that cost a lot of money on a day-to-day in maintenance. By the early teens, really, that's when we revamped with this smaller console, because sound to picture had changed by that time.
Right.
Which, of course, big story, because we had a motion worker, we had all the equipment, so we could sync the U-matic machines and all the video machines to tape, even though it was digital tape by this point. And it was that turn of the century thing where Apple Macs, at least, were just becoming able to, Pro Tools was Pro 24, could actually, was starting to be reliable enough to use, but it would be a sidecar really rather than the main multi-track, you know. That's how this place was built. And by the end of the 90s, that whole thing of taking a mobile recording unit out and then bringing it back and mixing it sound to picture, it was beginning to change, you know, the technology and everything else. And I looked at this place. I mean, we had the three production suites, as we called them then, Studio 1, Studio 2, Studio 3, which are over the road. And what is now Studio 4 was called the Graveyard because it's where old flight cases went.
Right.
We had a PA department down in King's Cross in what's now, what was then indeed Coldrops Yard. And so we had mountains of
posh
equipment.
Restaurants and things.
No, it was like, you know, Oliver Twist. Really.
I remember when it was like,
really
played the Water Rats and got lost down there in the mid-90s.
You know, the Goods Way there was like, you know.
Not like that anymore.
No, it's beautiful now. Actually, I really like what they've done, and the combination of keeping the old stuff, you know, and back these warehouse and the gasworks and all that, and in amongst new. I really like that development at the moment, anyway.
Yeah.
But everyone's there now, YouTube and Google. And when we came here, of course, this was cheap industrial land that no one gave a shit about. So we literally built this place. Yes, I can't remember the overall budget, but it was, you know, this room alone, I mean, the console alone was 380 grand. You know, the monitoring system is the same monitoring system. The room's been built around it. I think this is probably one of the best mix rooms you will find in London. I know that's a big statement, but I have been to a few. And it's I mean, maybe it's because it's what, you know.
I haven't yet mixed in it. Well, we'll find out.
I have, yes, hopefully, yes, soon.
Yeah, obviously, you know, Karsha and you were talking about Amy Winehouse. How did that all come about? Was it a rehearsal that turned into a recording, or? Yes,
before I met Amy, Frank was already out there because of work I'd done with other artists for Universal and Ireland. And Polydor, actually. And because of the rate of artists that were coming through here, a lot of developing acts would come through the doors because I guess everyone felt comfortable and felt like they could work here and be creative. And plus the standard of our results were released and releasable. So I'd already have quite a track record with E17, and Blue and Roger and Yusuf, all kinds of artists. I think the connection I'm trying to make is that the reputation for being able to deal with performance artists and capture their performance in a real sense, and then be able to mix it and make a record from it.
Because you come from that live background, so your job has always been about like getting the best results from an actual live performance.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but also I think, because it wasn't just that. It was also other types of record that were very much production. And not being a residential studio, it meant that I guess it was an easier thing to do at that point for them. So she was sent here to, yes, rehearse, but they wanted me to record it. Now, I hadn't really done any research at all on who she was. There were a lot of people through the doors at the time. I was just happy that Ray, her manager, and Darkus Bees, who we had a relationship with from previous things, and they sent her. I was so busy that time. I had my assistants sort of do most of the setting up, although I was there in the beginning. Nathan Allen, who was playing drums, he just took his floor tom. He said, "I forgot my kick drum." And he just took his floor tom and turned it on the side, and okay. And Dale Davis on bass, I already knew previously, so I knew the guys in the band. So I started the initial setup and went away to do something else, another session, and then I let them get comfortable, and then I went into the room, and there she was sitting on one of my IKEA stools, red stilettos hooked on the thing. She stared at me as if to say, "Who are you coming in the room?" You know, and I didn't introduce myself. They were playing. She was just kind of singing away, and she was looking at me. So they finished the number, and Dale says, "Oh, this is John, by the way." And I said, "Yeah, I'm just going to put some mics up for you, and we're going to, you can just carry on playing. Don't worry, And I put a Neumann U47 in front of her because I could hear that. That's, obviously I did a bit of research. She said, "It's all right. I don't want nothing posh. I just want a 58." And pushed the Neumann out of the way. I thought, okay, all right, fine, 58. That's pretty much how it went from that moment onwards. We would use the Sony C800 that we had here. Was gifted to us by Sony, in fact, when we opened. It was a prototype at the time. Recorded some rehearsals, and the results were stunning. It was stunning. And after the first, maybe it was over a couple of days, she came in here, sat down with me and Dale and the others, and the Fairchild used to sit just where that is. She came in and sat up here. We played back, and it was tears dry on their own, right? And she said, "Don't it remind you of anything? What does that remind you of, John?" I'm listening to it. I'm thinking, well, it does, but how can it be more? She's going, "Oh, good." I said, "Well, what?" I said, "Dale, what?" Saying No Mountain High Enough. I was like, "Oh God, right, okay, of course." But it didn't sound like that back in the day, and I've got some beautiful recordings actually, which I've been revisiting recently, because it's going to be exactly 20 years since this particular set of recordings when we recorded a whole load of B-sides. Like two-tone cover versions.
Oh wow, great.
And You're Wondering Now, Hey Little Rich Girl, and other stuff that's never been released. Too Much Too Young, Message to You Do. Yeah, and it's an absolutely amazing version. The energy in it is incredible.
Out of contraception, and you heard of the start. Oh, sorry. Went on a tangent.
Cap. Yeah. So those.
I love it.
I think we did about 9 songs in the day.
It's gratifying to hear she's a fan. Makes sense.
Massive fan of Two-Tone. What it actually turned out was happening was that we were recording all those songs for back to back. And we're doing it live.
But no Ronson and no Solange Remy?
No, Ronson was working on it in the States at this point. And we would send things backwards and forwards. Musically, it was a very prolific period for myself and for the studios. By the late noughties, we were really rolling.
Yeah.
At one point, I was the B-side king. I think I would do loads and loads of B-sides and stuff, and that was very encouraging for me because the pressure was off. You have to make a hit record here, and it was really about the creative performance capture.
A lot of this resonates with me because I've got the things that I've done that you can really easily find that were like records by well-known artists, but some of my best credits, in my mind at least, are the live stuff I did. I did a lot of live stuff. So I've done a Chili Peppers live record. I did a Black Veil Brides live record. I did a Joe Strummer live record. But they don't appear anywhere. No. Nobody knows. You
tell me about it. Tell me about it. But
put Warren here at Joe Strummer, nothing will come up.
At the end of the day, I don't mind.
Ramones. I did a Ramones live.
The memory and the experience of working on these things is rewarding enough.
So with the Amy stuff, so you're sending stuff back over to Ronson?
Yeah, back and forwards. Yeah, there was a version of Valerie that he sent over what he'd done, and then we'd play it over and over.
Was she already a fan of the song, or how did that work?
We were at an awards thing one time, and I forget the guy's name, from the Zootons, who wrote the song.
Yeah.
Comes up to her, and by this time she was getting a bit annoyed by everyone coming. She said, yeah, whatever, fuck off, like that. Yeah. Right. And so he kind of walks away with his tail between her legs. And we have to say, Amy, I can't remember his name, from the Zootons. He won't marry. Oh shit, she's mortified. Goes running over to him like, oh, I'm really sorry. So she was, it was quite funny. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know whether she chose the song or whether A&R chose it for her. But probably, knowing her, she probably chose it from a list of songs, probably. This
has been your mix room then since...
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, since it was built.
Great.
And these PMCs...
the Suffolk mounted ones?
Well, I'm usually, actually, the TB2s these are, but the TB1s, they were originally, I'm using on their side, and I have them positioned so I can accurately flip between the large and the small, and create a really good perspective of the two. So it's not dramatically different. I have been known to mix loud because I like to feel it, I like to feel it like I'm in the room, like it's in the room, And these PMCs have been my window on the world for 35 years. Jeff, the owner, being a drummer himself, he played with Van Morrison and John Martin and others.
He played with John Martin? I didn't know that.
He didn't play on Solid Air.
No, that was Dave Matthews. Huge Solid Air fan.
He was in a band called East of Eden.
Right, I remember them,
I think they had number one at some point.
Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking about this, so Shelby and Grace come along by the company. And you're talking about the sampler. They rent the sampler.
Yeah, I've been sold
and you
off
come with a sampler.
No, I have very much been sold on with the studio.
Came with the studio. Buy a studio, get engineer, producer, mixer guy, mastering engineer guy, free along with it.
Yeah.
No, that's great. It's great that you stayed, and obviously these.
Well, I wanted to. I didn't want to. I wanted to, if they wanted me, I wanted to be able to keep working here and continue the legacy,
Right.
And that's really what it was. I mean, before Shelby and Grace came along, it was Wigan is curtains time, because it sounds like such a whiny thing to say because of lockdown, but really, that was the truth.
Sure.
All the residents that we have.
People were forced to work from home and figure it out.
They went, even though we had sessions going on, and crikey, I mean, we had some amazing projects during lockdown, really good stuff. We had a internet music show that we would broadcast from here with some really prolific artists. But having said all that, it was really that the rent had doubled. And
because suddenly King's Cross is now gentrified and lovely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although that's good, as I say, I quite like the development.
Yeah.
What was cheap industrial land that no one cared about was now primo. I mean, like the same as trying to rent a place in Hampstead or Kensington. Up to this point, and the struggle back to our feet financially after the lockdown period was proving too much for Jeff, who was putting a lot of his own money into keeping it going.
Right.
And although we were busy and had been very busy and made some good profit over the years, it really wasn't looking too great. I mean, a massive property like this in the middle of the heart of King's Cross, not only the rent and rates, but the upkeep of the building, and when they came along, it looked hopeful again.
Amazing.
It's great to have a bit of young, enthusiastic, very different.
As opposed to old and jaded.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Fortunately, not too jaded, and excited to.
You don't seem jaded.
No, I don't think I am, but I don't regret anything. It's been great. It's been a great ride so far, and so let's hope it continues to be like that. My mum, she's a classical singer, still does belong to the Bach choir, a very distinguished classical choir.
Lovely.
In the day. And I remember being a small boy and Mum coming home from a session with the Rolling Stones.
What was the song, do you know?
You can't always
wow.
what you want. Something like that anyway.
Yeah. You must be really little.
So I hear my mum singing when she's doing all that. Yeah. I don't know whether they still did then, but they used the original tapes, because the key changes actually sped up rather than actually sang that. They just did a bunch of sessions, for them.
Yeah.
They had their name removed from the record because bar choir, the Rolling Stones back in the 60s were like the Sex Pistols when they came along in 1977, and and so for a snooty classical choir, they didn't want their names associated with an album called Let It Bleed and tracks like Psycho Killer or whatever it was. And I have actually checked this out on Wikipedia.
Yeah,
they had their names removed from the record.
But in those days, nobody was credited. Jeff Emmerich didn't receive a single credit on a Beatles album until many, many years later. It was like, you were lucky if they credited.
Isn't it, that,
Yeah, the orchestras were never...
I always feel proud of a credit, when I work on things. And some people are really good at doing that,
Sure.
I did sound design for Roger Wood's The Wall and Dark Side of the Moon tours, and they did a whole feature, on me for that, and some magazines. And
incredible.
It's always nice to be recognised, isn't it?
So remixing Dark Side of the Moon in surround?
Yeah.
So
although
7-1. 7-1?
No, it was 5-1.
5-1.
Because it was genuine surround, because it was a whole new set of concerts for Dark Side of the Moon, and we were in a Bray Film Studios a while after these sessions had taken place, and it's a true thing that Roger is really like the schoolmaster on, you laddie,
stand still.
Yeah.
How can you have any pudding if you haven't eaten your meat?
But it was lovely. He used to call me on a Sunday. I'd be at home barbecuing, and he'd call me and say, "John, the third track on side 2, Dark Side of the Moon, where the British," and talk to me like this about it. And I'd be like, like the god of... He's calling me right now and trying to remember exactly what happens in track 3 on side 2. But fortunately, I knew the record, so blagged it most of the time. But we're sitting there.
Just say yes and figure it out later.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Oh, yeah, of course it is. Check it out later. No, we got on really well, but we were in full rehearsals, full lighting rig, everything in Bray, where they used to make Hammer Horror movies. It's an old airport. So big air hangars as rehearsal rooms, and in this air hangar we, the big screen, the pyrotechnics, the whole lot, and it was all being driven from the Pro Tools rig that I had now programmed everything into. So the time code was driving the pyrotechnics and the video, and I was driving everything.
Incredible.
As well as some spoken cues. So everybody had their own cues, Snowy solo in 2, 3, 4, boom. And the beginning of the Dark Side of the Moon, obviously there's the heartbeat, right? Dun 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 dun. It's a different tempo from Breathe. The monitor engineer had fed Roger Nick's click. And so when I'm I'm counting into Breathe, but it's counterbalanced to the heartbeat, so it's not in time with the heartbeat because they're different tempos, so he's not supposed to hear that. He got it in his ears and he went, "Stop!" And the whole production, everything. "Don't you know my music?" Like, just let it rip. And I'm straight in front of the whole stage, sat with a big Pro Tools rig, and the crew that had been with them, with Floyd for years, who were all still with them, had warned me, you might be his favourite boy right now, but, he's going to take your balls away. He'll give them back, but he's going to take your bullets.
He'll give them back.
Yeah, he'll give them back, but he'll have them off you at some point. This was that point. He absolutely berated me. In fact, I was just like, speechless. Like, I couldn't even say to him, "Yeah, but that wasn't supposed to go to you. He sent you the wrong clip." There was no arguing. at that point. I think also because I had so much going on here at the time. I was working with Yusuf Islam, Cat Stevens, on new box sets of some of his live material. There was only 4 or 5 concerts ever recorded of his back in the 70s. And I had N-Dubs and Amy Winehouse, who just started. We just met that previous year. But I didn't want to go on an 18-month tour with Roger, even though he paid fantastically. I felt creatively that I needed to be here, not off around the world.
Sure.
You know, great pay for 18 months, but when you get back,
everybody's forgotten you.
Yeah,
I had
that was
similar opportunities.
You know, that was my instinct was telling me, I love working with you. And so when I had already explained that I wasn't going to go on tour with him, I'll do the rehearsals. But so I think this was kind of a good reason for him to let me have it, you know. And everyone down tools, and he stormed off. I knew the tour manager as well, very well, Andrew Zak, and he says, there you go, you've done it now, haven't you? I said, well, it's not my fault. Like, I know what happened, so I wasn't like in a distressed state. I was a bit shaken, but I knew it wasn't my fault, you know, it was something else. And so a few days went by. In these few days, David Gilmour and Rick Wright had been booked somewhere else to rehearse because the two halves of Pink, they would never meet. It was probably 2 days later, and I'm walking in Brave Film Studios down long corridor to go to the loo, and he's come out of his dressing room, and he didn't know I was walking down it. He's walking towards me, obviously also going to the loo. So as he walks towards me, he raises his finger and goes, "You're John Moon, aren't you?" "Yeah." "You're Roger Waters?" Trying to play on that, you know.
Yeah.
And he followed me, and then we stood there taking a piss together. And he says, "You've always been John Moon, haven't you?" I was like, "Yeah, you've always been Roger Waters." And he goes, "Yeah, all right." Like that, while we're taking a piss. And this was him giving me my balls back. And later that day, after hearing both sides of Pink Floyd playing, David Gilmour came over to Roger's hangout. Obviously, they knew they were there. All the crew backed away as he walked in the room with Rick. And Nick was there, and they all came together for the first time in 25 years. And that's after that, they did the Live 8 event. They all performed together.
John, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Warren, so much.
That was an absolute blast. We're going to come in here and do some work. We'll come in here and mix something up.
Yeah,
in fact,
like it's just the beginning rather than the end.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And once this camera stops rolling, I want to listen to a track or two in here. I actually want to hear what the room sounds like. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Adios. Farewell. Goodbye.